Scripting for the web, WS300, Platt College. Arrays and HTML objects, nodeLists, and HTML collections. From our book on page 70, you should consider using an array whenever you are working with a list or set of values that are related to each other. Arrays are especially helpful when you don't know how many items a list will contain. When you create an array, you don't need to tell it how long to be or how big to be, because you can add, remove, or change items in the list. You can even change their order. If you don't know how many items a list will contain, rather than creating enough variables for a long list of values, when you might only use just a small number of them, using an array is considered a better solution. A shopping list is something akin to an array. There are a number of items, they are related, and each time you go to the store, the items and the number of items may differ. Arrays are special kinds of objects. An array holds a list of other items inside of it. This way you can have a variable hold more than one value at a time. You will find this structure useful in many programming languages, including PHP. JavaScript has only 0-indexed arrays. What this means is that there are no keys. In this case, the key is the index of the item. HTML elements are also seen as items inside of an array. This is why we talk so much about parents and children in HTML. The parent element holds the children elements like items in an array, and they can be accessed with a bracket notation, just like an array. By their very nature, a parent element is a container, like an array is a container. The children within it are like items in an array. So for example, document.body.children square brackets 0 gets the first element of the body, whatever type of element that is. So we'll be talking about typical programming arrays in the following slides. And we'll be talking about HTML collections and nodeLists towards the end. So this is what an array literal looks like. You can create an array and give it a name like you would any other variable. On page 71 of the class book, there is some code for creating an array using the constructor method. We will never do this in class. The method you see here is the recommended method for creating arrays. This method is more consistent and easier to use. It also keeps the square bracket notation consistent. The constructor method is less consistent and easier to mess up. Each item in an array is automatically given a number called an index. This can be used to access specific items in the array. Here, we are getting the value. What is the value of the variable the color? Color 0 is white. Colors 1 is black, and colors 2 is custom. Here we are setting the value. So we're finding the item in the colors array with an index of 2 and changing its value from custom to beige with the assignment operator. All items in JavaScript have the constructor and the prototype as properties. Arrays and strings additionally have the length property. Really, the only two properties that you'll need to worry about in this stage of your development is what's shown above. While I mentioned that a prototype is a property, in this stage of your JavaScript learning you don't have to worry about. It is used to add functionality to a type of object. I've only seen this prototype property used to add to the date object to create a new method where you can call the date object and have it return the name of the day of the week, like Monday, rather than the value of 1, which represents Monday, when you use the getDay method on the date object. We'll talk more about this when we get to dates. The first line technically is not a method. It shows how you can add a new item to the array at a specific index. If that index already exists in the array, it will simply update. If that index does not already exist, then it will create a new item at that index. And every index that's between the end of the array and that new index will just be empty values. This is why it's included here with the adding array methods. The small m in milk on the second piece of code is just to distinguish it from capital M milk. Push adds to the end of the array, and the unshift method adds to the start of the array. The only way I can remember what unshift does is by remembering what shift does. Shift removes an item from the start of an array, so it shifts all the indices down by 1. Unshift does the opposite. So removing methods. Pop and shift all remove the item from the array. I remember that shift is at the start by remembering that shift changes all of the items in the array and shifts them down by 1. Shift and unshift are at the beginning, while push and pop are at the end. The splice method. Because of the syntax, Splice can allow you to insert items into the middle or remove items from the middle of an array. In the case of addition, where the second argument, the delete count, is 0, it takes nothing away. In the case of removal, where the second argument is 1, it removes 1 item. If it was 2, it would take 2 items from the array. As was mentioned before, we can access the individual pieces of an array by referencing the index and the square brackets. You can find the values in the array via the index of method or the last index of method. Index of starts at the beginning of the array and last index of starts at the end. If the value you are looking for is unique, then it does not matter which you use. The index will be the same. Index of has an additional optional argument where it tells the program what index to start at. Value of and toString both convert any JavaScript value or object to a string. In the case of an array, each value is separated by commas. When you use the join method, you can choose a different character or set of characters rather than the comma, like an asterisk or the pipe. Sort will take the set of items and sort them alphabetically. Reverse just reverses the order, and delete will set the index specified as empty. It does not remove the index itself. Default sort is called lexicographical sort, or in other words, alphabetical order. We can see this clearly when we reference the Unicode table and check against the characters' point values. This is why capital B or even capital Z comes before A, lowercase a, like we see in the example. Strings are compared character by character, in order. In the case of our numbers, they end up getting sorted by their character point values like strings. So a character set of 100 comes before 25. If I am sorting a set of numerical values, I want them as numbers. This anonymous function does the trick by subtracting the second item from the first. This comparison function returns a negative value if the second item is bigger, and a positive value if the second item is smaller, and a 0 if they are equal. This tells the sort what order the numbers go in. ASC stands for ascending order, and in order for us to get a descending order, instead of having return A minus B, we return B minus A. These are the new methods added as of ES6. We've been covering more common aspects of ES6 in class, like the difference between interpolation and concatenation. We'll probably go over these in detail when we get into the portion of the class where we deal with ES6 specifically. But I wanted to put these out here so you could at least see that they exist. So let's talk about HTML collections versus nodeLists. So both of these are an array-like object, one that has a length property and items accessible by their index, but we can't use the normal array prototype methods on them because they're not arrays. So there are some differences between an HTML collection and a nodeList. The HTML collection contains HTML elements, so we can get a collection by using like get elements by tag name, get elements by class name. We can use document.forms or children even. A collection of HTML elements is live, so that means if you have a collection of elements stored and you add one more item that would be in that collection, the value will update and include that item, versus the node list, which contains a list of nodes. So when we use query selector all, that's a node list, so it doesn't update. If you added a new element that would be part of that grouping, it doesn't show up. Child nodes, so getting something by its child node, get elements by name also is a node list. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, a collection of document nodes is static, so if we added one to the live DOM, we wouldn't be able to detect that with a node list. So jQuery has a few different array methods, but I'm going to highlight the each method. We've already used this in class, and this will probably be the one you most frequently use. A good portion of the other jQuery functions that work on arrays are duplications of native JavaScript, and so I don't see a point in teaching you that because you might as well just use the regular JavaScript for it. The nice thing is you don't have to worry, though, about whether or not the elements that have been collected are a node list or an HTML collection. Each function works the same no matter what. So in summary, arrays are objects. They can store more than one value as a list. Arrays have properties, constructor, length, and prototype. Arrays have methods, lots of them. Indexed items start at 0. Length tells us how many items are in the array. Length -1 always gives us the highest index. HTML collections and node lists are array-like, but not actually arrays. So, I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in class.